Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us for today's presentation. My name is Marissa, an attorney with Legal Aid of North Carolina's Helpline. Today, we have Natalia Watkins presenting for us. If you're unfamiliar with the format of this event, first, Natalia is going to review a PowerPoint presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. If at any point during the presentation you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A box on Zoom or the comments section on Facebook. We'll review all questions put in the chat boxes during the Q&A session at the end. Please remember that this is a public forum and Legal Aid is not representing you at this time. Natalia will go over this in more detail, but please remember to keep your questions as general as possible, as we cannot provide any legal advice specific to your individual situation. The session will end when there are no more questions, and regardless of where we are, we will not take any more questions after 4:20, and we'll have a hard stop at 4:30 p.m. With all that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Natalia to get us started. Natalia, you're muted. You can go ahead and get started.
I was talking in my head. Okay, let me. Good afternoon, guys. My name is Ty Watkins. I'm a staff attorney with the Medicaid Appeals Technical Team for Legal Aid in North Carolina. In today's presentation, we'll be discussing the NC Medical Debt Relief Initiative that got signed into law last year. Last year. So I'll go ahead and get us started. Okay. So, about Legal Aid in North Carolina, we are a statewide nonprofit law firm. We provide free legal services for civil matters, including criminal functions to low-income people. Our goal is to ensure equal access to justice and to remove legal barriers to economic opportunity. Some of our other listener learns include criminal record expunctions, wills and advance directives, other benefits like Social Security, disability, and SNAP, and then also family law like simple divorce and child custody, and also tenants' rights. Today's listener learn is Medicaid focused. So our agenda for today, we'll be discussing the problem regarding medical debt, and then also the impact that medical debt has on individuals, and then a solution, which is the NC Medical Debt Relief Initiative, and then also how that initiative is going to be implemented, and then we'll get into any questions regarding that. So starting out, the problem. So prior to December 2023, that was the month in which North Carolina, effective date of North Carolina expanding Medicaid, which allowed a lot of adults 18 to 64 to now qualify for Medicaid under Medicaid expansion. North Carolina was one of 7 states prior to that date who had not expanded Medicaid. And at the time, North Carolina was one of the highest states with the highest percentage of adults with medical debt. And also North Carolina was the 3rd highest percentage of households with medical debt and collections. So this initiative is going to be able to do a lot to kind of lower that number. So why is medical debt a problem? For many, medical debt is a result of one-time or short-term events, which can have a long-lasting effects. Medical debt isn't necessarily just always owing debt to a specific hospital or a specific provider. It can also be caused by someone having to take credit card charge, putting things on credit cards, having to take out personal loans, having to borrow money to pay for medical things. And then also having medical debt can cause someone to not be able to use funds to buy other essential items, having to spend time to deal with debt collections and other things, and also having a lower credit score and inability to obtain credit in the future. And then there's some statistics about when people expect to pay off medical debt. Most people expect to be able to pay it off. About a third of people expect to be able to pay it off in a year. Other people, 25% of people think they can pay it off in 1 or 2 years, and then 20% of people, which is 1/5, don't believe they will ever be able to pay it off. And that's why medical debt can just have such a lasting impact. And then 1 out of 7 people report, and when they have medical debt, they're not able to see a provider. So medical debt really can have a lasting impact on people. And so those most impacted by medical debt are uninsured adults, women, Black and Hispanic adults, parents, and low-income adults. And as we mentioned, so one of the things that North Carolina has done, as they uh, pitched to CMS a initiative to be able to kind of help with this. A lot of people who are low income be able to resolve some debt. So the North Carolina Department of Human Health Services is going to use the state's Medicaid program to incentivize hospitals to relieve more than a decade of existing medical debt for eligible North Carolinas and prevent kind of people regaining kind of that debt and having new debt going forward. So this was pitched to hospitals. The debt that would qualify for this are debts owed to hospitals. So there's 99 hospitals in North Carolina that were eligible for this, and all 99 agreed to be a part of the initiative. And kind of the incentive for this is that through the Medicaid program, if they're a part of this, they are able to get paid kind of at a higher reimbursement. And that's kind of the initiative. And also just want to mention, this PowerPoint is more of a kind of a generalization of all the things that are happening. A lot of times they're more of the highlights. There are a little bit more specific rules. And in terms of, whether somebody would qualify or not, it's best to reach out to that hospital regarding if the debt would count. On the next slide, I am gonna it's gonna list all the 99 hospitals that are participating in the debt relief, and also just so other people can read that. So some of the hospitals just include, UNC, UNC Rex, Atrium, North Carolina Baptist, like I said, all of them, Wake Med. So like I said, this is the full list of all 99 hospitals, and that's all the 99 hospitals that could have been included in this. And so then this next slide, these are the 6 major highlights about what the Debt Relief Initiative program is going to be able to offer. So the first one is the forgiving of the actual debt. The next one is the discounts for low income patients. Third, cap of interest rates for the debt. Then also no reporting to credit agencies. Fifth, presumptive eligibility for financial assistance, and that's going to be ongoing. And then restrictions on aggressive collection. And I'm going to talk about all these a little bit more as we progress within the next couple of slides. And so these rules, so these are the conditions, these 6 are the major conditions that the hospitals must follow. And also some of these policies also apply to anyone that might purchase the debt that's owed by patients. As I mentioned, these are going to be a lot of more general answers. More specifics, you'll either want to reach out to the Department of Health and Human Services, the hospital, or the third-party vendor that's facilitating this. So like that, my next slide will be talking about the forgiving of debt, which is going to be highlight 1. After that, we're going to talk about financial assistance, which is highlight 2 and 5. And then lastly, we'll be talking about collection practices, which are going to be highlights 3, 4, and 6. Okay. So first thing is the implementation plan of this process. So in October 2024, the hospitals had to begin the process of figuring out what debt was going to be relieved. And the debts that could be relieved are going to go all the way back to January 1st of 2014. And then as of January 1st, the hospital should now already be implementing some of the plan, including automatically qualifying people for charity care. So this is one of the ongoing things with being a part of this initiative. And then also putting into place policies for people to get discounts to care under charity care if they're a qualifying individual, and that had to be done by January 1st of this year. And then by July 1st of this year, they have to already have the practices in place to curb the aggressive debt collection practices. Also, no longer having the medical debt that's included in this affecting someone's credit rating, so removed from the credit report. And then also forgiving the past debt of individuals who are currently already enrolled in Medicaid. And as I mentioned, these are some of the more general timelines. There are more that would fit under each different one. Also, part of this plan is a 2-year plan. So this is the first year, things that are required to be done. And then next year, we'll also have things that are required to be implemented. So participating hospitals will be working with Department of Human Health Services, DHHS, and Undue Medical Debt and other third-party partners over the next 2 years to fully implement this debt relief through the debt relief mitigation policies. Um, and also by March 1st, the hospitals which should have already been entered into the contracts are going to kind of have to be able to buy the debt back and get it off people's credit report. Okay. So as I mentioned, the first thing we're talking about is forgiving debt. So who is eligible for the NC Medicaid? NC Medical Debt Relief Initiative. So they're going to be those people who are currently enrolled in Medicaid, and then also people who are not enrolled in Medicaid but who have income at or below 350% of the federal poverty line, or individuals whose total debt exceeds 5% of their annual income. So these are the eligibility groups for people to count in part of the debt relief initiative. And again, the debt that qualifies is debt owed to the participating hospitals. So if someone's currently enrolled in Medicaid, and this is kind of any Medicaid program, this would also include family planning, the limited benefit of family planning. So if someone's currently enrolled in Medicaid, and that would be based on the time that the hospital is gathering their kind of records and their collections. And that, again, the hospital would be the best person to act if you would qualify under that category. And so if someone's currently enrolled in Medicaid, all their outstanding medical debt that's owed to the hospital going back to January 1st of 2014 would be forgiven. And those people who are not enrolled, debt can be forgiven going back to January 1st of 2014. However, there is a 2-year period for how the dating back would count. And again, the hospital would be the best person to act, or some of the other non-third parties that are working with this, to find out what exactly would that 2-year look like in terms of someone's debt. So then we're going on to the financial assistance policies. So like I said, the first one was mentioned about discounts for low-income patients. And this has to do with the charity care. How much would someone qualify in terms of charity care? So there's going to be a sliding scale for discounts ranging from 50% to 100%. And this will be based on someone's federal poverty line for their income. And also that would look at their household size as well. One of the examples given was that a family of four with income up to around 62,000 would be eligible for 100% of hospital bills debt. And so that would be based on that federal poverty line for that year. The other financial assistance initiative was the presumptive eligibility for financial assistance. And this is a process a hospital must develop to automatically screen patients for those charity care programs without requiring the patient to actually apply for assistance. So this is one of the implementations that's going to be a 2-year plan. The first year includes selective groups like those who receive WIC or those who receive SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, who are experiencing homelessness, or anyone already enrolled in Medicaid. And then within the next year, it will be including income, those who have below 300% of the federal poverty line. And so these are some of the 2 financial assistance initiatives. And then the last 3 have to do with collection practices. So one of the initiatives is capped interest. So if your debt's being held by one of the participating hospitals, the interest is capped at 3%. If the debt's then sold to a third-party debt collector, it will have interest rates capped at the secured overnight financing rate, which is a benchmark interest rate for things plus 1%. And then the other 2 collections practices are no reporting to credit agencies. Hospitals aren't allowed to report the medical debt to credit agencies, and these are the debts that have been forgiven. So any debt that would qualify for forgiveness under this is not able to be applied to a debt collector. And also this would include any debts kind of bought by a third party as well, debt collector. And the purpose of that was to ensure that someone would be able to remove a barrier for someone that's trying to secure employment, housing, transportation, just being able to support oneself, because this is showing on a credit report, so you're not able to do that. Okay. And then the last one is restrictions on aggressive debt collection. So one of those is that the hospital can't sell the debt until at least 120 days after the first bill has been sent to the patient. Also, it puts some caps on when the hospital is able to sell a debt to a third-party debt collector. They're not able to do that if someone has income 300 is below has income up to 300 of fire line. Those people wouldn't qualify for the debt being sold. Also, it doesn't allow the hospitals or even third-party debt collectors to be able to engage in direct aggressive collections, such as causing a person to be arrested, causing an individual to be held in civil contempt or imprisoned, foreclosing on an individual's real property, or garnishing wages or state income tax refunds. So this is something; those are things the hospital or someone that's buying a third-party debt collector wouldn't be able to do if that qualifies under this initiative. So something else, this isn't necessarily part of the North Carolina Debt Relief Initiative. However, it is a recent law, a final rule that's come out um, from the Federal Bureau for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and it's a final rule that got published in January, which will become effective in March of 2025. Again, this is another rule that these are more general kind of solicitations of it. There is more specifics to it, but basically the two big things: it will prohibit lenders from considering medical information as a part of eligibility determinations, and also it's going to ban medical bills being included on credit reports, which can also be another big thing, as I stated previously with the last slide about removing some barriers to people being able with their credit and be able to do other things. For any more information about this, you'll want to check out the consumerfinance.org. But that's something else that's passed more recently that's going to go into effect. But so next, I'll just say, have it included on the FAQ section on the Department of Health and Human Services for the NC Debt Relief Initiative. They have several answers to questions. One of them being about what would be the tax implications of this, and so I'm going to read directly from that website. So, like I said, I'm not advising on tax. This is directly from the website. It states that there are no individual income tax implications for people whose debt is forgiven because the NC proposal requires hospitals to work with third-party nonprofit organizations whose purpose is to provide charitable aid by purchasing and forgiving the medical debt. The debt is seen as a gift to the debtor out of detached and disinterested generosity. And again, that's taken directly from the state's website about what the possible tax implications may be. That's not advice from Legal Aid North Carolina. That's advice directly from the state. And again, if you have any additional questions regarding that, you'll want to reach out to DHHS or a tax professional. Legal Aid North Carolina is not advised on tax. But so some helpful tips and reminders is that you want to make sure that you're advocating for yourself. With the debt relief, you should automatically be put into the program. However, things do happen. Someone may fall through the cracks. That's why we did want to mention this. So that way, someone, if you think you might qualify, it's going to be worth asking the hospital to see if you qualify for the program. You want to make sure that the hospital is aware that you have Medicaid, you're currently receiving Medicaid. That's possible that you're a part of this initiative, that you're low income, and you possibly should qualify, and you want to make sure that you reach out to the appropriate hospital department for assistance with this. And again, want to remind people, this debt relief it only covers debts involving the 99 acute hospitals that were included on the previous slide. This only applies to hospital debt. This would not apply to debt owed to an outside specialist or provider group. Is debt billed by the hospital that's owed to the hospital. And again, this information is mainly coming from the DHH's website and North Carolina State Government. This information is good as of January 15, 2025. But, so that was kind of the main presentation. Just know if you're someone that are looking to see if you qualify for legal aid, legal assistance, our phone number is 866-219-5262. And you can also try to apply on legalaidnc.org. Many of the lessons learned I mentioned, we do also advise on besides family law. And some other resources regarding Medicaid and just health insurance in general. North Carolina Navigators Consortium can help people apply for marketplace insurance and also initial applications for Medicaid as well. You also got NC Med Help, help with insurance, then NC Medicaid Ombudsman, another statewide project that if you're someone enrolled in Medicaid managed care, they can help you try to resolve issues. And then lastly, we have the North Carolina Lawyer Referral Service. These are not lawyers associated with Legally North Carolina. This is a program ran by the North Carolina Bar Association. It has private attorneys that advise on pretty much most topics. And what they have agreed to is you only have to pay $50 for a 30-minute conversation regarding any kind of legal issues or questions that you may have. And so we're at the end where, like I said, we're down to the questions. Marissa has mentioned it previously. The purpose of this is for us to answer general questions. Today's PowerPoint was mainly on the NC Debt Relief Initiative. So mainly would want to answer questions about that. However, if anyone has any kind of general questions regarding Medicaid in general, I'm also happy to ask that. That's what, my team, that's what we do. We do everything regarding Medicaid. So I have no problem doing that. But again, you definitely want to ask a very general question. We cannot give specific advice. This is general information. And a good way to know that if your question is taking a long time to get out, then you're probably not asking a specific. You're not asking a general question. You're asking a very specific question. And as I mentioned previously, Legally North Carolina does not advise on taxes. I cannot advise on taxes. So I know I've mentioned that in a slide, but will not be able to advise on it. And additionally, I'm happy to answer some general questions as available by the DHH website regarding the NC debt relief. But it's possibly going to be possible that you either reach out to DHHS or a participating hospital for further information with that, just because each hospital may have their own specific policies and practices that we're just not aware of. Because each hospital, there are some general rules, and like as I mentioned, but a lot of this, how it's going to come out, is going to be based on the hospital and how they plan to implement. Um,
Okay. So, as Natalia mentioned, if you have a question, I do see some raised hands. You cannot unmute in this forum. So if you have a question or a comment, you need to type that in the Q&A box on Zoom or the comment section on Facebook. You cannot unmute in this forum. We do have one kind of general question. Someone is looking to have their Medicaid approve them having more than one potential therapist. Um, is there a way they could go that, some sort of exception they should be looking for? Do you have any information for someone who's trying to get more than one provider or a thing for Medicaid to cover that? I don't know if that's something you can answer.
I don't necessarily know the answer to that. In terms of providers, there, to my knowledge, there's not a general cap. So because I don't know, anyone that's trying to, having issues with, accessing providers or anything like that, I would recommend reaching out to NC Medicaid Ombudsman. That's what they are there for. If someone's facing denials for services, that would be the first step you want to reach out to. They can try to help you, assist you, find out what the problem is, and see if they can resolve it that way. Also, you should be assigned a care manager who's also put in place to be able to help you. And so that would be the first step I would take there to see from there. If you're someone that qualifies for our services, they could possibly try to help you get to us or to another legal nonprofit that could help with that. But that would be my first step. If you're facing now, either speak with your care manager or reach out to NC Medicaid Ombudsman if you're facing a service denial.
Perfect. Um, what recourse, if any, for patients with medical debt with non-hospital providers? Are those debts usually just sent to collections and have an impact on a patient's credit?
It all depends on the hospital. So some hospitals are nonprofit, some are for profit. So nonprofits have other guidelines they have to follow. So a lot of times they're already required to have charity care and financial assistance in place. So usually you want to see if you can qualify for those services. See if you possibly can work out a payment plan with the hospital, or you could also try to see if they're willing, just depend on how much the balance is, that they'll write it off. Some do offer clinics. So if you're having some that you're non a hospital that wouldn't count into the initiative, or a different provider, that would be the first step there. Seeking the financial assistance just through their regular programs or through regular charity care in terms of those programs.
Yeah. And I know I saw a raised hand, but I don't think that person has put something in the chat. Just gonna give it just a second here to see if anything else pops up.
And just to go back to the previous question, about services, if you're in a Medicaid plan or even Medicaid Direct, reach out to your plan for assistance. That's what they're there for. They should help you, and they want to help you. So also reach out to them if you're experiencing an issue, with accessing, care.
Um, to see if legal aid can provide you any legal services, I see a question here. You have to apply to see if you have legal issue that legal aid can help out with, and if you qualify for services. To qualify for services, you have to be both income and asset eligible, qualify for legal aid services. There are some types of cases where those eligibility requirements don't apply, but in terms of asking if legal aid could help you with a legal situation, you would need to apply. I encourage you to apply via our website, because the phone call using the phone number can kind of be a backlog there. But you can apply on our website at oh, jeez, legalaidnc.org/apply, and legal aid does not handle family matters such as custody, as Natalia mentioned. Uh,
But to go back to the question about it was mentioned that I answered for a hospital provider. The same answer for the hospital provider is the same answer for a non-hospital provider. They possibly may have charity care and they may not, or financial assistance, but the other options likely try to get a payment plan, or see if they're able to write off the debt. They're the only kind of medical relief right now is for hospitals under North Carolina's plan. However, as I mentioned, with the change in the federal law and with the federal regulation regarding credit reporting, that applies to debt, just not any medical debt, not necessarily debt held by a hospital. With the credit reporting, as I mentioned, though, that's more of kind of a general rule. There are more specifics of what can get asked on a credit report or credit eligibility regarding that, but that is kind of the general rule put out by the Consumer Financial Bureau.
and then do you see the two-part, I think both of those
Okay.
things in the chat
Um,
is all one question, but it might be a little specific for this
So
one.
anytime it comes to a Medicaid service, the first thing we're going to say is you should go reach out to a doctor, see if they'll refer you, see if you talk that process. In terms of legal aid, we can't step in until you've gotten a formal denial. So again, it's worth reaching out to your health plan, reaching out to your care manager, to see what things are covered by Medicaid, what may be covered by Medicaid. So that would always be the first step in terms of those types of services. Medicaid has kind of the floor on what they will cover, not cover. Some health plans do cover more. And so in terms of what may be covered, may not be covered, it's best to start with talking with your primary care physician or reaching out to your health plan to see if that's something they may cover, or not cover.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I think I got it. Okay. And let me check Facebook one last time. All right. As I am not seeing any other questions in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you all for joining us, with a special thank you to Natalia for presenting. If you would like to review anything that we talked about today, we have posted a recording of today's event to our Facebook. It will be immediately available. You can access this recording with or without a Facebook account at www.facebook.com/legalaidnc. If you would like to register for one of our other Listen and Learn programs, like Natalia mentioned, on tenant rights, Social Security, SNAP, family law, you can do so on our website at legalaidnc.org/clinics. Thank you all so much, and I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.